All right, folks, thanks for joining me today. I'm at the Lahaina Harbor here in town, and I came across this really cool looking boat. I love the color of it, and the light was just right in the morning. It just worked. So I decided to make a subject out of it, or it was kind of yelling at me to paint it. Basically, that's how I felt. So. I gave it a go. It was a lot different than the other paintings I did in Hawaii. So I was always looking for something different to paint, something cool, something that just captured a different aspect of the places that I stayed at. And this is one of them. And I sped this video up just a little bit, only twice as fast. So this painting took me about 40 minutes or so. I believe, something like that, all together, letting things dry and everything. But this was a very challenging painting for me. It took me, I usually don't paint that long outside. Usually these quick sketches are like 20 minutes or shorter even sometimes a little bit longer. But this one was on the long side, that's for sure. So right away I started out with the main focal point, which is that blue sailboat. And I decided, I was like, oh man, I should have painted the background first. That's usually what you do. And then you paint toward the foreground, so that everything kind of melds together. But I'm not very logical when it comes to watercolor painting. I kind of just go with the flow. But I decided, okay, before I get too much in here, I gotta get the background in. So I got the sky in, and I ran into problems because there was a lot going on in that harbor, as you guys saw at the beginning there. A lot of boats in the background, a lot of things happening, and I really wanted to simplify. And that's always a challenge for me, simplifying enough to where it kind of still looks like something. And in the end, I think I simplified this pretty well. So we'll have to see what it looks like at the end here, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out in the end. The color harmony is really cool. It was just a beautiful, beautiful morning at this harbor, but definitely a challenge, that's for sure. And like I said, the challenge was simplifying, getting all these elements to fit on the painting, trying to be not too detailed with it, but still make it, look pretty realistic. I might have gone overboard on the details and stuff, but sometimes that's what you have to do. Sometimes it happens with a painting because, I'm still technically figuring out watercolor. So I haven't gotten to the stage where I'm like having a lot of fun and stuff. I'm still like figuring out some of the technical aspects or how to go about a painting. Depending upon the subject, of course. If this was strictly a landscape, I probably could have been a lot more loose with it and stuff. But something like this, I've never really painted before. All these boats and what do you call it? The complicatedness. Can't think of the word. There's just a lot going on, basically. So I was just very cautious about how I went about painting this for the most part. I really wanted to make sure this boat in the foreground, this focal point, of course, was looking really nice, very accurate. Pretty tight drawing, kind of. Getting a little loose there with some of the lines. I'm never going for hyperrealism or anything like that. Just trying to get things to look, just show enough detail to where it looks like, okay, this thing looks pretty realistic. But then when you look up close, it's just a few strokes, kind of overworked that water there. Could have done that a lot easier, I think. But really the value, that's what it comes down to for me, I think. Value is important. I think color is always secondary for the most part. to value. Obviously every painting's different, so the reasons I paint a painting, each painting could be different. Sometimes I'm trying to match the colors exactly what I'm seeing from life, and I'm doing it as kind of a color study, or just colors that I really like. So I'm like, okay, I really want to capture the colors, and then everything else is kind of secondary. But for most compositions, speaking generally, value is super important. So here I'm really pushing the value on this dock, this little boardwalk next to this boat, because that's the closest thing to me, and that's where all the darks were, and it really creates a lot of depth and distance for the background where those boats are at, where I had to simplify. I left the values pretty light in the background, even though they were actually pretty dark. There was a lot of dark shadows in that background on those boats. And I decided that, like I said, I needed to simplify. So I left the values back there much lighter than what's in the foreground and what's in my focal point, because I wanted all the contrast to be on the focal point, which is the foreground, the boat in the foreground, obviously. Unfortunately, you can see the sun started coming up over the trees behind me, and it's casting some warm light on my paper. It makes it really difficult to paint plein air sometimes when you have shadows and light on your paper like that, but it definitely makes an annoying video, so hopefully it's not too annoying. But that's the reality of my situation at the time, and I'm always here to document. So around my focal point there, this boat, I'm painting some thin lines in now. Some ropes tied to buoys in the water, lines of the sailboat. And this just helps bring it together, gives it a little more interest. All these little wires and ropes and stuff hanging, that just helps bring more attention, a little bit more suggestion of detail in the foreground, and brings more attention to that area of the painting. That's my thought anyway on it while I was doing it. And there's actually a similar boat right next to it, so that's what I'm painting there, kind of the mast for that boat. But I wanted to play it down a little bit. You can see I didn't even really put the boat in itself. It was like a white boat, and it's kind of a ghost boat sitting there, because it's not important. That boat's not really important, but it's just nice to show that, hey, there's something next to it, it's similar. So it gets the idea that it's in this harbor next to this dock. So getting some small shadow shapes there, really tidying things up now, cleaning some things up, adding a little bit more darks where they need to be now that stuff is dried a bit. But I'm getting pretty close to the end of the painting here. And thank God, because the more you add, it doesn't always make a painting better. Usually less is definitely more for the most part. So that's always something I'm trying to keep in mind. Just because you keep adding stuff, it doesn't make it a better painting. But I did decide the last second here that there needed to be some verticals in the background to kind of echo that they're boats. It kind of gives more variety back there, kind of breaks up that. And it just shows that it's in a harbor, there's more boats, there's similar things happening. So I think it just brought it together a little bit more. But I was still keeping it simplified, keeping the values lighter. But overall, this is probably one of my favorite paintings, just with the way I rendered it and stuff from Hawaii. Hope you guys enjoyed the video as well. We'll get a look at the finished painting here shortly. And thank you guys for watching. Take care of yourself. Peace, my friends.